Over the past decade, there have been dozens of mass shootings, most often committed by young white men, few labeled terrorism. Now, some civil rights advocacy groups are claiming only Muslims and African Americans get labeled terrorists, and that the suspect charged in the Charleston killings should be called a domestic terrorist. Jared Lee Loughner, James Holmes, Adam Lanza, all young white males charged with horrific crimes. They shot and killed innocent people at a political rally, inside a movie theater, and worst of all, inside an elementary school.
Our nation needs to take a very different approach to mental health.
In almost every case, the mental stability of these young men has come into question, not their political motivation. Now some civil rights groups claim only Muslims and African Americans get labeled terrorists, like the Roslindale incident of several weeks ago.
It's an active investigation with the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Now 21-year-old Dylan Roof has been charged with the murder of 9 African American worshipers inside an historic Charleston church. Authorities are calling it a hate crime, and he has not been charged with an act of terrorism. You know, the media, for the large part, takes its cues from law enforcement when it describes these kinds of incidents and doesn't go to the next level, and then if it's already been tagged that. But one of the issues I've been concentrating on from these advocacy groups is why they want that label, because in some ways it demeans it in some respects, because terror is often indiscriminate, unlike this particular act, which was extremely personal and specific. It was an intentional act directed at a specific group. Whereas if you look at even Timothy McVeigh or the 9/11 bombers or even the Marathon bomb, it was indiscriminate in a sense. So does the language identify it as a more serious crime?
I think in this case, I personally would say that it does qualify as terrorism, because you look at the fact that this was done in a place that should be a sanctuary, literally a sanctuary. And even to say that it was not indiscriminate, I mean, he had no idea who was going to be in there. He could have killed even more people than he did. The fact is that something like this doesn't just hurt all the people that are in there, it hurts even more people throughout the community. This is something that could be done as an intimidation.
Well, he certainly targeted them as opposed to...
That's true, but I think that overall, I mean, I think that for journalists, yes, we are the arbiters of words. We have to be very careful about what we say and do, but I also think that we're out of our jurisdiction here. This is something that when we talk about labeling something terrorism, that has something that means something entirely different when the president, the attorney general, or your local police chief says it.
Well, it does appear as if he had a broader political motivation. Apparently, he thought he might try to start a race war or what have you. So I don't have any problem with calling this terrorism. Keep in mind that the first anti-terrorism laws in America back in the 1870s were specifically directed at protecting African Americans from the Klan. So there's a long history of that term being attached to anti-black violence. What strikes me is that there's a benefit to naming these acts terroristic acts. Hate crimes, I'm afraid to say, come and go. Newtown, when it happened, touched off a flurry of concern for funding for mental health treatment and tighter gun controls. Over time, that faded out. There was pushback from the NRA and others. Not that much got done. But when you say terrorism, oh, the floodgates of government funding open and laws get changed. True. So maybe there's some benefit there.
He hasn't been charged with terrorism. No. He may in the future, but terrorism is a federal crime, and he's been charged in state court to this point.
And there is a death penalty in South Carolina.
Yeah. I have not, to be honest, I have not seen any reluctance on the part of people in the media to label this as terrorism and as a hate crime. I think the media is being accused of a reluctance that I haven't seen. I think that the label's been used rather freely, and I think it's for exactly the reasons that Justin and John mentioned. You have the targeting of a specific racial group for political purposes, and as Lennon said, the purpose of terrorism is to terrorize, and it would certainly seem to qualify on that score as well.
3 components to terrorism: has to involve an act that's dangerous to human life, has to affect the conduct of the government by mass destruction or assassination or destruction, has to happen in the United States. Fits all 3 of those. The mayor came out and called it a hate crime. I would posit that this is both a hate crime and a terrorist, and should be labeled terrorism. The reason to label it terrorism, and vis-a-vis what people are complaining about, is that there's a deeper look that John mentioned when you label it terrorism. You have to start thinking about, is this a more widespread, is he a product of a systemic situation, not just a lone crazy guy? He himself said, I want to start a race war. He said it before to his friend. He said it to the policeman, apparently, and he said it in the church. It can be no clearer.
So
that's who he was.
Would you put Geraldine Loeffner and Adam Lanza in different categories?
I would put them in. Now I'm trying to figure what Loeffner, which was the one that shot Gabby Giffords.
That was him.
I think I might call him a terrorist.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was an he went after.
I don't have any problem with it. I just think in some way it almost.
The other two guys, it's on the fence.
I felt like it almost was
You know.
diminished the importance of it. That was my feeling about it, but I have no problem using the term.